Have Apple computers start making their computers here. We're going to have Apple start making their iPhones here. We're not going to be over in China and all these other places. We're going to bring our jobs back. And we're going to get our businesses back. We're going to get our businesses back. Because China has taken from us so much money, so many jobs. China has rebuilt itself with what they've taken out of the United States. Okay, they've rebuilt themselves. I call it the greatest theft in the history of the world. They're not spending the money with us. Now, here's what's going to happen with Boeing, because I love Boeing, and I know you went through hell to get Boeing. But China now is insisting that in order to get the big order, that Boeing build a massive plant in China, okay? So they're taking all of their intellectual property as part of the deal. This is to buy an airplane, a lot of them. But China's going to build massive plants now, and Boeing is going to spend the money, but they're taking intellectual property. They're taking everything. And you know what? You have your plant, but unless a guy like Trump is in charge, that plant will be in jeopardy very quickly. And you better be careful. Just remember it. Because China, the currency manipulation that China does is like a great chess master. It's brilliant. What they do is incredible. And they always wait till we have a problem. Because it's a problem, like we have a problem, so they reduce, they currency manipulate. What they do is incredible. And you can't compete as a business, and we have all the cards. Because they take our business out of here so quick, like we're babies. It's like candy for a baby. So Boeing, I just tell you, in terms of what you have and what you've built, be careful. Because they want to take those planes and they want to make them in China. And that's not good. That's not good. But believe me, if I win, it's never going to happen. Because again, China needs us more than we need China. Just please remember that. Obama never figured that out. Because why? Because they're sucking our money out. We have rebuilt China. We've rebuilt. You go to China, they have bridges like the George Washington Bridge all over the place. That's like a little bridge. They're building roadways. They're building airports. They're building these. You go to places like Qatar. You go to places all over the Middle East. It's the most incredible thing. Then we come home. We live. We have we have the F-35. We have the 35 fighter, where China has copied it. Did you see that the other day? They have a picture of the F-35. It's a new fighter. We come up with it. We develop it. It's very complicated stuff. We develop it. China has knocked it off. You look at that and this. We do the work. And now they have to come up with a new concept. I'll tell you what, folks. It's just so hard to believe. But you got to take a look at it. Look at it. The planes are almost identical. So we do all the work. We do all the development. They copy it. They steal it off our websites. They probably get it off Hillary's emails, right? Right? Wouldn't you think? I think so. Just be careful. You won't have to be careful if I'm president. I'll be careful for you. It would be so easy. You won't have to be careful. Now, let me tell you, I'm more conservative than anybody, but I'm common sense conservative. I believe in free trade, but we got to get something out of it. We can't have free trade where we lose $500 billion a year, where we lose $100 billion with another country and $50 billion with another one. I see things. As a business person, I see things. China is ripping us off like nobody has ever seen. They are charging tax when we send. We have these politics. China has lobbyists too. Everyone has lobbyists with us because we're like the big people with the dumb leadership with a lot of money. We're like the pot of cash. We rebuilt China. You ever go to China? The bridges they built, the incredible roadways they have, the trains they have that go 350 miles an hour. Our trains are still the old trains, chug, 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 breaking down all over the place. I mean, you ever see the Chinese trains? They have trains, you wouldn't believe it, in different parts of Asia. But Mexico is the new China. We'll be smaller, but it's the new China. They're taking so many businesses. Carrier just announced they're moving to Mexico. You saw that. China is killing us. Japan is killing us. Vietnam, new one, killing us. Every single country, practically, that we do business is killing us. With Japan, we're going to lose a tremendous amount of money. They send They send their cars here like it's candy, okay? Millions of cars we get. We send them wheat. We send them nothing. We send them sometimes cattle. And they don't accept it because their farmers don't want it. They don't want anything from us. Japan is killing us. Komatsu. Look at what they're doing to Caterpillar. A friend of mine is an excavator. He buys excavating equipment, right? He goes out and he buys excavating equipment. I say, what are you doing? You're not buying Caterpillar. I can't. They have cut the yen. They have devalued their currency to such an extent. First time in his life, he's buying excavation equipment from Komatsu. I said, what's the difference? He said, they're both good. Caterpillar's better, but this is good enough. I owe it to my family. I owe it to my wife. I owe it to my employees. And I want to see the day when Apple makes its product on our land, not over in China. Because I'm bringing our jobs back from China, folks. We're going to bring them back. We're going to bring our jobs back from Mexico, folks. We're going to have Ford built here. We're not going to have Ford built in Mexico. We're going to bring our jobs back. Vietnam is a new one. We're going to bring our jobs back to this country. And I always say Obama's a lousy negotiator. What China has done to us in terms of taking our jobs, taking our base, taking our money, our manufacturing, China has done one of the greatest bank thefts in the history of the world. It's like a bank theft. It's like a theft. One of the greatest thefts in world history has been what China's done to this country. Now, we make better products than they do. They beat us with monetary manipulation. Beating all these guys. You look at the kind of deals we make. You look at what's happening. Our country is going in the wrong direction, and so wrong, and it's got to be stopped, and it's got to be stopped fast. We can't go another 4 years because the world is smart, and they use their smart people, and they use their most cunning, streetwise people, and they know what they're doing. We have people that don't know what they're doing. We want to be politically correct, like Jerry Sr. would say, politically correct. Nabisco is they're moving their big plant from Chicago. They're moving it to Mexico. Ford is building a $2.5 billion plant in Mexico. That's not going to happen. I'm going to say, folks, we got to stop this. We're losing our jobs. We're losing our manufacturing jobs. We've lost 7, 8, and some people say 10 million jobs. We've lost 50,000 manufacturing plants. We're getting killed. And the quality of our jobs is terrible. You saw that in the last report. We protect Germany. We protect Japan. We protect countries that nobody even knows about. We protect Saudi Arabia. Before the oil price down, Saudi Arabia was making $1 billion a day. We protect them. They pay us like practically nothing compared to last night's winner of the New Hampshire primary, Donald Trump. Now, Friday, the feds announced that China is selling $366 billion more merchandise to we Americans than we Americans sell back to the Chinese. $366 billion trade gap. Specifically, how will you fix that?
You know, this is my big point. I've been talking about it for years.
I know, but I want to know how you're going to do it.
The number's actually higher than that. Well, listen to me. I'll tell you, okay? We are going to have to go. One of the reasons they're able to do it is they devalue their currency to such an extent. They are the single greatest currency manipulator that's ever been on this planet. And if they don't stop devaluing, we're going to have to charge them a tax on the goods coming in. They, by the way, Bill, just in case you don't know it, they tax our goods going into China. It's a totally unfair deal. And what's happened, every time they devalue their currency, they make it impossible and more difficult for our businesses to deal with China on the other side. The gap is getting bigger and bigger. It's really called the deficit. The deficit is getting bigger and bigger. And unless we have somebody very smart and very tough that understands it, and our president does not understand it, but I understand it better than anybody, we're going to have nothing but trouble.
So you're going to say to them,
505.
If
Bill,
you
it's going to be $505 billion this year.
I'm going to slap a tariff on all Chinese goods coming into the United States. Okay. They then are going to say to you,
yes,
President Trump, we are going to sell all of our bonds that we are holding for America's debt. We're going to flood the market with them and crash your currency. That's what a trade war would do.
No, they're not going to crash. No. They wouldn't crash. They won't crash our currency. They'll crash their economy. That's what they're going to crash. They start playing that.
Be bloody.
They will crash their economy.
Be bloody.
You will have a let me explain something. We're too dependent on China. We're too dependent. They will have a depression the likes of which you've never seen if they ever did that. That's what would happen, Bill. I mean, you know what people don't understand in our dealings with China? We have the cards. They don't have the cards.
It's a high
Unfortunately,
noon
we have political leaders that don't. We have the cards because they need our economy.
And that was a good, specific answer, and I appreciate that. So now let's go on to your statement. You're going to deport 12 million people. As you have to know, each one of the 12 million people here illegally is entitled to due process. That means that if Donald Trump, as president, issues a deportation order, they are entitled to a court hearing in front of a judge. With 12 million people, it takes us up to 2,000. They are.
Excuse me.
2,086.
If they're here illegally, Bill, if they're here illegally, they may or they may not be. Just like the argument we had about the anchor babies.
I'm telling you,
in my opinion, you don't need.
All settled law says once you're here, you are entitled to our constitutional protections. Every single case. All right. Just so you know.
I disagree. Okay?
Okay.
I disagree. That doesn't mean I wouldn't do that. That doesn't mean I wouldn't do it.
They'll block it.
If they're here illegally, I disagree with you.
They'll block it. The federal courts will block it.
They're here illegally, Bill.
Look, Obama just got blocked
They're here illegally.
It doesn't matter. They're entitled to constitutional protections. Obama just got blocked on A, his illegal immigration amnesty, and B, in telling the coal companies that you can't have a certain amount of emissions. He got blocked on both of them.
You and I had an argument not so long ago about the anchor babies, where somebody comes, has the baby here, and they're forever going to be taken care of. And everybody said you need a new constitutional amendment to end that. They turned out to be wrong. I turned out to be right. You just need an act of Congress.
Right.
You don't need a new constitutional amendment. And we had the same discussion.
You can change the law, but
There's
not retroactively. You can change it, but not retroactively.
Okay. So, Bill, what you're saying would mean that if somebody just walked across the border, and they're here for a couple of days, and Border Patrol catches them, they can't bring them back. We have to go through a whole long process,
right? It depends.
Right? Because you're not right about that.
They can catch them in the act of crossing. If they catch them in the act of crossing, they can repatriate right away. If they're here and established, they get the due process. All right, one more thing.
Right, I disagree.
All right, okay. That's what makes our program great. We have lively debate. You know that. All right, in Colorado, they legalized pot, okay? $1 billion industry, $1 billion a year industry in Colorado. And all of the dealers, all the pushers are going to Colorado, loading up on the free pot because it's legal, not free, legal, and then zooming around the country selling it. Does that concern you?
It's a real problem.
What would you do?
It's a real problem.
What would you do?
There's another problem. In Colorado, the book isn't written on it yet, but there's a lot of difficulty in terms of illness and what's going on with the brain and the mind and what it's doing. So, it's coming out probably over the next year or so. It's going to come out
but what
loud
would you
and clear.
do to stop it?
It is.
What would you do as president?
I would really want to think about that one, Bill, because in some ways I think it's good and in other ways it's bad. I do want to see what the medical effects are. I have to see what the medical effects are. And by the way, medical marijuana, I am in favor of it 100%. But what you're talking about, perhaps not. It's causing a lot of problems out there.
But the medical marijuana thing is a ruse that I got a headache and I need 2 pounds of marijuana.
It is, but I know people that have serious problems,
but that
and
can be
they
taken
did
care
that,
of.
and it really does help them.
Okay. All right, was that fun? Fun interview? Another one? Fun? You like this show better than anyone, right?
It's always a pleasure after I have 1 hour's sleep coming in from New Hampshire to be on your show.
But
it's always a great honor.
Tan. You still tan, even though you're not getting any sleep. I don't know how that happens. Donald Trump, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Maybe it's good.
And once again, congratulations on
look at what countries like China are doing to this country. They are eating our lunch. We're building China. We are really building China because everything we make is made in China or other countries. It's not made here. We don't make things anymore. We don't make, as an example, I ordered thousands of windows the other week, a couple of weeks ago. They're made in China. I said, does anybody make windows like in this country, in North Carolina, in Alabama, in Oregon, in places that used to make windows? They don't make them anymore. We're building China by ordering all of their products.
What is the single most important thing President Obama can do right now to fix the economy?
Well, there are so many things, but number one is you have to provide money for people that want to build. You know, the biggest industry is the real estate industry in the true sense. Thousands of people building houses, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, if people want to borrow money to buy a house, they can't. They can't borrow money to buy a house. And it's an anomaly, because if I want to borrow money and I have a good asset, you can borrow it at 2%. So you would think if you can't borrow money, you'd be paying 17 or 18%.
So what can President Obama do?
Well, the first thing I think that you have to do is make this country competitive with other countries, because right now it's not. We have to be a manufacturing country again. You know, healthcare is all wonderful, but healthcare doesn't make money. We have to bring money in. We used to make things. We don't make things, relatively speaking,
because it's cheaper
anymore.
to make it in China or India.
If you look at their phony currency, it's very hard to compete with China. And we make a better product than China. And I can tell you, because I buy a lot of Chinese product only because I have to. We make a better product. But in my opinion, you tax China. China is taking advantage of this country unbelievably. Now, I say you put a 25% tax on everything that's made in China.
That's a tariff.
That creates, and you know what? And then
a trade war.
That's right. And you know what? I'd love to have a. How are they going to retaliate?
Well, you know how much loans, you know how much money we owe China right now?
1 year of this tax and we don't owe them anything. 1 year of this tax and we don't owe them anything. Well,
because they have a lot of U.S.
I have a lot of China.
If they call in,
I have a lot of so-called friends in China, and they call me and we talk. They can't believe how stupid our representatives are that they're getting away with it. I don't blame them. I'm just saying they're getting away with murder. They are selling us product with a very low currency, and they are getting away with murder. And they can't believe they're getting away with this murder.
Who is stupid? Who in this? Name names.
Well, you have to start by saying the person that appoints the people. Now, who appoints the people? The president. The president appoints the people. When I negotiate with China, I want our business leaders, our best business leaders, to negotiate with China. I don't want a diplomat that wants to keep everybody happy negotiating with these people. They have their smartest and their best negotiating. We don't. We have some diplomat that doesn't know the first thing about business.
What about the Treasury Secretary, Timothy Geithner?
I think he's torn. I think he's torn between politics and business. I think he knows what to do, but I think he's afraid to do it. And he's got his own problems. And now you see Summers is out. He's gone. It'll be very interesting to see who gets appointed. But you're asking what to do. We have a huge trade imbalance with many countries. But if you use China as an example, they're eating our lunch. When people talk about free trade, like you just said, oh, that's tariff, well, I don't mind a tariff on a country that's got billions and billions of dollars of surplus. We are rebuilding China. We're rebuilding China because we order so much. We're so big. We're ordering so much product.
To the rub after the snub. China does not roll out the customary red carpet staircase for the president, forcing him to use the emergency exit. And Donald Trump doesn't waste a minute noticing it.
You know, it's interesting with the president, because I saw that yesterday with the stairs. He went to Saudi Arabia and the top people didn't greet him, right? He went to Cuba and Castro, the brother, was not there to greet him. And I said to myself, you know, if that happened, I'd land. I'd hear he's not there to pay respect to the country, not to him, to pay respect to our country. I would say, thank you very much, fellas. That's okay. Close it up. Boom. Let's go back to Washington. I would.
So is Trump right or wrong? Hi, everybody. I'm David Aswin. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus to find out with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Elizabeth McDonald, Mike Ozanian, John Tamny, and Bruce Jafson. Steve, what do you think?
Trump on this is absolutely right. What the Chinese did was inexcusable, but it shows their contempt for him. It was a slap in the face. One Chinese official chuckled and said he had to leave the rear end of the plane. He used a more graphic description of it. And so Trump should have done what Reagan did in the past. If something's not done right, walk away. But it shows that the world is becoming more dangerous when the Chinese treat that president like that.
And Bruce, it's this whole idea of soft diplomacy, which President Obama has sort of championed, versus hard diplomacy, which Donald Trump stands for. You look at this nuclear explosion that North Korea set off this week. I mean, this is in direct defiance of President Obama's nuclear test ban proposal. So all of the soft diplomacy doesn't get us a lot.
Well, I mean, first of all, the soft diplomacy, I beg to differ on that with Trump, you know, snuggling up to Putin this week and doing interviews on Russian TV. So I don't know what the hard diplomacy is there. But I would say President Obama, it's part of a strategy in Asia. I mean, he was the first president to go to Laos, I think, ever. And he's been over there in the whole region. And I think that the Chinese are worried about that. I don't think that they're snubbing us so much as that they're worried about the relationships he's building.
Mike, the question is, what does it get us in the end? They had a communique at the end of this meeting in China. There was nothing substantive about really critical issues like the militarization of those islands in the South China Sea. I mean, you see what's happening there. That's a threat to all of the people that live in that region. Also, the Chinese protectionism, nothing about that in there. So what has this gotten us?
Yeah, well, this has been Obama's approach, David, throughout his presidency. I mean, even for things like the Olympics, when he flew to Europe to try to get the Olympics to Chicago, they laughed him back to Chicago. You know, it's okay to speak softly, but as Teddy Roosevelt said, you got to carry a big stick. Right. Unfortunately, President Obama has a tiny, tiny stick.
And Rich, also there's a question of symbolism, and it does matter in diplomacy, particularly in places like China. When the president got off of the tarmac, or as he was preparing to, there was this big furor between these Chinese reps wagging their fingers saying this is our country, our airport, and that's what led, that's one of the things that led Trump to say he would have just flown away.
You know, when I first heard Trump make those remarks, I thought it was a hot-headed overreaction, but I have to say that I've come around to the point of view, particularly, you know, with the subsequent comments of the Chinese, that Trump may be silly symbolism, but Trump has to, and the U.S. president has to show strength, if it's real or symbolic. And Obama's been pushed around the world map like you've never seen. Even the president of the Philippines, you know, within the last week, called him a son of a whore.
Unbelievable stuff. Of course, the president canceled his side trip to the Philippines because of that. But Emac, as Steve already mentioned, Ronald Reagan thought symbolism was important. There was this meeting in Iceland with the Soviet leader at the time, Gorbachev. President Reagan walked out of that meeting when he thought he was doing the fast step, the Russian leader, and he ended up ending the Cold War.
Yeah,
I mean, that was significant.
That's right, David. It happened in 1986. It was a dramatic and spontaneous moment when Reagan stood up and walked out. It was over eliminating U.S. and Soviet nuclear arsenals. And you know what? In Gorbachev's inner circles, it was understood that it created a new trust between Gorbachev and Reagan. When Reagan did that, they had a new understanding, and Gorbachev started to speak differently about Ronald Reagan. It changed dramatically the events of the Cold War.
Well, and John, again, symbolism. We saw a little bit of soft power symbolism at the beginning of Hillary Clinton's stint as Secretary of State when she gave the Russian foreign minister, her counterpart, one of these buttons. That was supposed to be the reset button. That didn't turn out too well, did it?
Well, I'm not too worried about this. The reality is China's people or its government may not treat our leaders well, but its companies line up to serve our needs on a daily basis. We are number one. As for how our politicians are treated, I like when they're cut down to size. I think this is healthy. We need to stop holding them in such high regard.
Well, I see Mike almost jumping out of his chair. Go ahead, Jose.
I think John is so off on this. Look, one of the reasons why the Republican Party did not want Ronald Reagan to become president is because our companies were doing big business with Russia and other countries. And Ronald Reagan said, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop this. And he built up our military. They had to pay respect to us. Ronald Reagan cared about Main Street Americans and the safety of this country, not just our big corporations and not just the big business they do in
Steve,
China.
The point is that China does have, we all love free trade, but China is very protectionist. We let in all their goods. They don't let a lot in their own country.
Well, and there were remedies in place, David, to take care of these kinds of infractions of trade agreements, violations, and there's cyber stealing is rampant. We have measures we could use against them. But if you let them get away with it, they're just going to do more. And with this president, when he says there will be consequences, everyone knows that means there'll be no consequences, and they can continue to push us around.
Well, by the way, Bruce, you mentioned that Trump had some relations with Putin speaking, and that's true. He was speaking very kindly of Putin this week. But, of course, Hillary has a lot of connections we've explored before with Russia. But despite the connections that may or may not be true with Trump and Hillary Clinton, China China seem to get along wonderfully. They didn't put out the red carpet for President Obama, but they rolled it right out for Putin. Look at this.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, first of all, back to the red carpet, I believe we take our own red carpet around the world. That's one of the things I discovered under this, and I don't really view this as a big deal. But Trump's continued snuggling up to Russia are problematic, and that's why we need to see his tax return, because we need to see where his investments are in all of this.
Emac, what about John Tammany's point that, look, the commercial interest will always trump diplomacy and hard-knock diplomacy?
I'm not so sure about that. I think that, you know, listen, we have a crisis in how we govern ourselves. And, you know, what's problematic is how President Obama has been talking down America. America has been a dramatic force for good and hope in the world. The people around the world look to us for security and for freedom. We're a beacon of hope. Yeah. For the president to continuously talk America down is so bad. And I also agree with Bruce. Trump needs to release his tax returns. There's problems there. Okay. We need to see if there's a Russia connection.
I want to get in that kettle, but final word, Rich, on the idea of commercial interest trumping diplomacy, whether it's soft or hard diplomacy.
I think John Tammany, much as I love John Tammany, underestimates China's ambition to reassert itself as the preeminent civilization on Earth, a position it once had and had fallen very far from. They are hugely ambitious about this.
I'm getting a wrap, but I got to give you the final word. Go ahead, because you're getting beat up on here.
Free trading countries are not at war. It's the cheapest foreign policy. Okay. I'm hearing a lot of nonsense. They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to serve us.
Where is the United States doing well? So Russia and China now are unifying and they're getting together. Then you have Iraq, okay? We spend $2 trillion in Iraq, $2 trillion. Think of this number. This number is not even a number that you, honestly, 10 years ago, you didn't hear the word trillion. So we spend $2 trillion, and more importantly, thousands of lives, including lives on the other side, by the way. I mean, okay, some people say, oh, who cares? I care. Okay, destroyed. And what we did is we took this country and so weakened it. You know, it was always Iran and Iraq, and they'd fight. One country would go 2 feet over here, the other country would 2 feet. Then after like 10 years, it'd settle and they'd start all over again. You know, it was, they had some, well, we've destroyed that country. We've destroyed that country. But we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives, tens of thousands of wounded warriors all over the streets, you see them. We can't even call them. They won't even return our call because China's buying their oil. China thinks we are truly the dumbest people on earth. China now is buying a big portion of their oil. They're being controlled by Iran, which I said a long time ago. And then when I made the statement, because it looked to me like it was going down the tubes, why don't we take their oil? You know, we are at war. People said, what a terrible thing to say. Now you call Iraq, they won't even take our phone call. Think of it. They won't even take our call. Now, an interesting thing happened in Afghanistan. Nobody knew that Afghanistan has tremendous minerals and tremendous wealth in minerals. I ever thought this was a country that didn't have that, but they have tremendous wealth in minerals. Well, we're fighting over here, and on the other side of the mountain, China is brilliantly, I don't say negatively, they're smart. They're brilliantly taking all the minerals. So we're fighting here, big mountains. We're fighting here. China's taking the minerals on the other side. And I'd say to myself, how is it possible that we can be so stupid? An interesting thing happened the other day. I'm reading the front page of the New York Times, #1 story, #1 column, that we can't make a deal with Japan for agriculture. Now think of this. We can't make a deal. Japan will not allow our farmers to put food and sell food in Japan. Hey, I like the Japanese too. I like everybody that buys apartments from Trump, okay? Very interested, but I do. But I respect them. I respect people. You know, the fact that their leaders are much smarter than our leaders, that doesn't make me dislike them. It makes me respect them. So I'm reading this article that Japan won't let us even think about putting our food in Japan. And then I'm looking at boats with millions of cars pouring into this country, tax-free, made in Japan. And I'm saying, who are our negotiators? I mean, if I was negotiating, I'd say, fellas, you're going to take our food and you're going to love it. You're going to love our food. I mean, the food is peanuts compared to what we're talking about. Peanuts. So you say to yourself, how is it possible that Japan would have the nerve to say, we're not going to take small potatoes, some farming goods from the United States farmers. It's great product. Everybody admits that. It's not like it's tainted or problems. It's great product, better than what they can do. So they say, we're not taking your product, but by the way, we're selling you millions of cars. Look at the size of these massive car companies. And it's because of the United States. No tax, tax-free. So all you'd have to do if you're sitting down, I guarantee you this, if I was the negotiator for that deal, you'd have so much food pouring into Japan right now, they wouldn't know what to do with it. They wouldn't know what to do with it. So I say to myself, why aren't we smart? We used to be brilliant. We used to be a brilliant country. We're not a brilliant country anymore. We're a foolish country. We're a dumb country. We have leadership that is either something wrong with them, or they're not intelligent, or there's something wrong. Maybe it's lobbyists. You know, I hear the lobbyists are so powerful in Washington. Maybe it's lobbyists. Maybe you have to do something about that, because maybe Japan and maybe the Middle Eastern states. I mean, look at this. I heard a number today that since 1931, we have more oil reserves in this country in terms of storage reserves than we've had since 1931. Think of that. And yet the price is at an all-time high. Now, I went to Wharton, greatest business school in the world, okay? Did I say a good thing? Yes? The Wharton Club, which is a great club. But I went to Wharton, and I will tell you that the very basics of that are that prices come tumbling down. So here we have, and we're buying from OPEC, and we're buying from Saudi Arabia, also great relationships with the people in Saudi Arabia. They cannot believe, by the way, because they're friends of mine, they can't believe how stupid we are. They tell me, hey, Donald, we're getting away with it. What are you? I say, you're right. Saudi Arabia is making, think of this, $1 billion a day. $1 billion a day. So much money, what they're doing there is unbelievable. You look at our airports. You look at your airport here. You look at your airport LaGuardia and Kennedy and Newark and LAX in Los Angeles. They're like third world country airports, falling apart. They have terrazzo floors inside that are so old. And when they fix them, they don't fix them with terrazzo, which would be terrible. Should rip them out, put down a new floor, right? They fix them with asphalt. So you walk in, you got terrazzo that's really tired in the main terminal. And then they put black asphalt from a road, an exterior road. And this is our roads are falling apart. Our bridges are falling apart. In China, they're building 24 bridges, most of which are bigger than the George Washington Bridge. I mean, just massive bridges, massive construction. They're taking our jobs. And we don't even know it. Then the president of China comes over, and we have a state dinner for him, honoring him. What a wonderful guy. And he's laughing all the way back to China. So it's all branding. But when you look at the things that are going on, now in Afghanistan, we're spending tremendous amounts of money. And President Karzai, as you know, our president flew into Afghanistan. And President Karzai, who's getting sacks and sacks of cash, you know, they're getting $50 million in cash. And this is, I mean, green. And I want to know, who is the soldier that's delivering the cash? That's what I want to know. Can you imagine? Do you trust somebody to hand? They're carrying satchels of cash because they're paying off the tribal leaders and the warlords. And it's incredible. $50 million. I want to know, who are these people that are doing this? But Karzai said, I won't meet with the president, and I won't meet him at the plane. So you have the president of the country who spent, I guess we're close to $1 trillion there also, lands. And the president doesn't have the decency to come and pay his respects, even to just shake his hand. And I say to myself, that's very bad branding. Because when you get right down to it, that's what we're talking about. That's pretty bad. It's pretty sad. So you look at Libya, you look at Syria, the line in the sand. Remember the famous line in the sand? And then nothing was done. Not that it should be done, and not that we should be involved, because we shouldn't be involved. But you don't say, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, and don't do, and then they do it. And then you don't follow up. And by the way, I don't want them to follow up, but you should have never made the statement. So we are in very, very serious trouble. And I just ask you, what positive thing has happened to this country in the last 10 years, and that includes Bush. I'm not a Bush fan, believe me. I am no Bush fan. He got us into Iraq. I think Obama should have gotten us out a lot faster, but Bush got us into Iraq. I am no Bush fan, and anybody that knows me knows that. But what's happened good? I mean, can we say that the economy's booming? No. Can we say unemployment? I mean, unemployment's a totally phony number. Massive unemployment all over the place. If you stop looking for a job, they take you off the unemployment rolls like you've got the job. We have massive unemployment where we don't make our products anymore. They're made mostly in China and other countries. Mexico is doing phenomenally well. Phenomenally. That's going to be the new China as far as making products. Look what's going on in Mexico. And you say to yourself, isn't that sad? Isn't that a shame? Now, the good news is we have tremendous potential. Tremendous potential. We have power over China that you wouldn't believe. China sells their product to us, no tax. No tax. And yet they'll manipulate their currency so that our people cannot compete with their product. We make better products than them, by the way. But we can't compete because of the manipulation, which is in the history of the world, there has never been a better or smarter currency manipulation than that done by China. All you have to do is say, folks, it's going to end. It's going to end now. And if it doesn't end, we're going to throw a little tax on you that every product you sell in this country, it's going to be a 25% tax. By the way, the number should be 48% based on their manipulation. But I want to be nice. We'll start with 25. You wouldn't even have to do the tax because everything would stop. Same thing with Japan, with the cars. I mean, it's the same thing. It's so simple. But we don't have the right people. I don't know who these people are. Where do they find these people? I assume they're diplomats. They're incompetent. We have incompetent people running the country. Now, Obamacare is having a devastating effect on the country. And, you know, they say whoever becomes president, 2016 is going to be a catastrophic year for the economy. Because, you know, all of the problems of Obamacare and other things were delayed till 2016. Somebody's going to have a real problem. And they better get smart. And the Republicans better get smart because they're going to inherit a mess like has never been inherited before, ever. Ever before. So the good news is that we have tremendous potential with proper leadership. Tremendous. We can turn it around so fast. We're sitting on energy that's bigger than all of them. Almost. We're sitting on massive amounts of dollars coming out of the ground. We don't use that. Even the pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline. The Keystone Pipeline, I don't even care that much about it. I'd say build it because it's jobs and good and all that. But we don't need Canada's oil. We don't need Canada's oil and gas. We don't need anything from anybody. But build it anyway. It's jobs. It's environmentally very good. And it should be built. And it's amazing that it hasn't been built. And Obama's having a hard time with it. And some of the people that don't want it to be built, they're people on Wall Street. I know them. You know why they don't want it to be built? Because they're invested in oil and gas, and they don't want to bring down the price. It's not that they're great environmentalists. Take a look at these people. Look at their right. These people couldn't give a crap about the environment. They're invested heavily in oil and gas. They don't want the competition. And our politicians sit back and they say, oh, wow, he gave a lot of money to the Democratic Party, in this case the Democratic Party, but gave a lot of money to the Democratic Party and we have to be nice to him and others. So it's a very, very sad thing. I would say that I'm very proud of this country, but I would say that if we don't act quickly, it's going to be very, very hard to bring it back. We're very, very far out on a limb. Something has to take place, and it has to take place quickly. Our people have to be taken care of. In order to take care of people, we need wealth. We don't want to cut Social Security. We don't want to cut Medicare or Medicaid. And I'm, different from a lot of Republicans. They keep talking about cutting. I keep saying build the country up so you don't have to worry about Social Security. It's peanuts compared to the kind of numbers you're talking about if we knew what we're doing. We have to take our business back from China and other countries. We have to take it back. And you will see, I said it, winning. It's about winning. We've got to start winning. Not one good, and I searched everything. We haven't had one good story about this country being great for years. And it's about time that we started getting the good stories. And we can do it, but you need proper leadership. And with that, I will take some of these killer questions that I've been viewing, and let's go. Go ahead, Myron. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I already had one note saying, why are we showing Mr. Trump the questions in advance? We don't show Mr. Trump the questions in advance. He was sitting next to our chair of the Speakers Committee, Jerry Zaremski, who was trying to organize the cards. So we'll ask the questions, and I know that Mr. Trump can't wait to answer them. Let's go right into politics. You have flirted, I think that's the right word, you have flirted several times with a possible run for the presidency. Why have you never run?
Okay. Well, I didn't flirt. People were asking me to run. They wanted me to run for a lot of things, including governor. I said no, 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 and I kept saying no, no, no. They wanted me to run for governor of New York. I never wanted to do it. I said it would, and finally I just said I'm not doing it. But I didn't flirt. People wanted me to run. We're going to see what happens in 2016. We're going to see what happens. I want to see what's going on. This country is in serious trouble, and I'm going to see what's going on. But I didn't flirt. And I think I probably, during the speech, cleared it up pretty much. I love what I'm doing. I would rather do what I'm doing than do that. But I also love more than what I'm doing and more than virtually anything else other than family, which includes my beautiful Ivanka, who's here. I mean, I love this country. I love this country. And I hate to see what's happening. And if I don't see the right person, I will do something in 2016. I will do it as sure as you're sitting here. Thank you.